this is the way it is, and certainly that we ourselves can't change it. So in both these respects, we have learned something which is of no advantage to ourselves, but a great deal of advantage to the carbon capitalists. The fact that the neoliberals actually imagine that the world can't change is patently absurd, as people have already mentioned. It will change whatever happens, and they will have to change with it. But it doesn't have to change in one direction, and there are all kinds of historical examples from the beginning of class society, really, of change, historical change going from unequal to equal, as well as from a more equal society, which is what we've had in Britain, for instance, with the welfare state for the last 50 years, to something which is more unequal. So it goes both ways over history, all the way through time. This is very important to hang on to. It can get better. It doesn't have to just go in one direction, this change. This de-skilling, this whole generation, 30 years of de-skilling, I think is very important to understand, because we've forgotten a lot of tricks about how to fight power. One of the things I'm always struck by is the way we're told things are illegal. And everybody goes, oh my God, it's illegal. We can't do it. Well, fuck that. We've become fearful, genuinely fearful for our jobs, but we don't talk about our fear being that. So we displace it. We displace it on migrants, we displace it on Taliban, God knows what. But that fear is actually holding in place the inequality which is being precipitated by the carbon capitalists, by the neoliberals. And it's a real fear for jobs and work and so forth. We've also forgotten other kinds of tricks, though, of naming and shaming. We've forgotten the power of mass movements, of walking down the street, the walking to work that we were talking about in the car with Michaela in Uganda just this morning. It was useful. It's useful to remember that people just walking to work can threaten a whole government, right, if they do it systematically. It's got its context, I understand that, but it's a simple action. Dear God, it's a powerful thing. My grandparents were really good on efficacy. They kind of understood how you should go from A to B and what you might have to do this. And I bless them for that, but I think it's lost. My socialist utopia, just in case you think I'm wanting something different from what you might imagine, is one that is equal. I need to say that. One that actually captures the joy, the wonder in a small child's eyes before it is actually drilled out of them in school or in fear of work, in so forth. I want that wonder to be with us all, I think, through adulthood, through the whole of our lives. It's an equal world, it's a democratic world, and it, most importantly, is a world where we have the right to fight as ordinary people for decency. And that right to fight, it's a belligerent world in that sense, and God damn it, grandparents ought to be really belligerent, I believe. I think it's important to remember, too, that it's ordinary people make this world work. Bankers don't do this. Bankers don't teach children. Bankers don't make trains. They don't make cars. They're not engineers. They don't make the buses go. They don't drive the cars. They don't do these things and so forth. This is what we do as ordinary people. And it is perfectly possible to imagine a world without owners and without managers, because we can self-manage. Everybody can understand how to do that. That is what working class people do. So in a sense, we can find our way to that. It's not unimaginable. And in that respect, I would actually say, of course, this is a process. We can't get A to B without finding ways to it. And one of the things I would push, and I don't know why you're here because you're already in the climate jobs thing, is the climate jobs campaign, because I think it's an enormously important first step to thinking about how one can actually go forward to that ordinary, that world that we want. Okay. We have to be calculated, is I guess what I'm saying, in terms of degrees of reformism as we make the steps forward. Several things beyond this. What Sylvain was saying about a connected world. I believe very much that we have a globally connected world, that we're all part of the whole, part of a single whole, of course, and that most ordinary people in this world in which we live actually want exactly the same things that we do in this room. They want to be protected from fear. They want the weak to be protected. They want health for their children. They want education for their children, and so forth. And I think we have to constantly say this. And every time we hear something that says, ah, yes, but the Chinese or the whatever or the Taliban want something different. No, they don't. They want the same damn things. Most ordinary people absolutely everywhere want that. We have to remember that as part of our vision, I think. It's enormously important. We want social welfare. We want work that is for people and obviously not for profit. Okay, so we can take it that we understand that human societies can change and the direction of change can be far greater good. In my socialist world, we would also want to reclaim the right to hope, in other words. And we need to reclaim this right damn fast because time is short and the scale of change that we're needing to make is enormous. And I have 3 points I would like to finish with. One, these are my step-by-step, coming from modesty to I would love to see revolution. The first of them is simply to remind you of what I'm sure most of you know, and that is that change doesn't happen overnight. Think of the Berlin Wall. It didn't just fall. It was 40 years of oppression, 40 years of ugliness. People slowly, in confidence, with courage, said, look, this isn't right, this isn't right. And finally, 2 years before the wall fell, in Leipzig, there were huge demonstrations so big that the soldiers and the police that were supposed to turn and control these demonstrations couldn't shoot because their mothers and sisters and no doubt grandmothers and grandfathers were in those demonstrations. They couldn't shoot. It was too big. So let's remember about mass movements and let's not be shy to say this is the one thing we can do to actually, we are the 99%. Let's actually mobilize in terms of that. That's one important point. The second important point, I think, for all of us here is to remember that Britain is not actually the center of the world. And we need to look out and to learn. Because we've been distilled, we need to actually look elsewhere and find clever ideas of how people have actually fought power, what works, and so forth. We need to be much more international in our perspective, I think, because I think we can learn. And we're blessed, thank God, with the internet, which is, in one respect at least, very, very good at helping us do these kinds of things. And the third thing I want to say is let's be pretty certain that the catalyst for change, which will be revolutionary change, the wall did come down, right? And the catalyst was an extraordinary set of things, but the history of that was a long one. The catalyst is likely to be unexpected. It feels to me, I would like to be hopeful, that there are things that are changing. It feels like the early 60s to me, I'm that old. But what I'm feeling is not civil rights in the States, it's not Vietnam, but it's something that's coming from sexism. There's something afoot which is quite extraordinary. And I want you to just hold your minds open for a moment because I want to tell you what's just happened in Oxford just a few days ago because I think it's a clue. There have been fights over the horrendous rape and murder in Delhi. We know this from the last years and the other kinds of things that are happening in India over appalling acts of sexism. We find all over the college campuses in the United States something which is very, very new, particularly the elite campuses, is that people are standing up against rape and against the arrogance of elite men who think that they can rape young women, basically. And this is something very strange because it's a way of getting at that capitalist elite, which is kind of unexpected. Who knew this was going to be what was happening? And in Oxford, a couple of weeks ago, 4 weeks ago now, the president of the Oxford Union, which is the privileged debating society to which Kissinger and Clinton and God knows who go to speak when they want to be heard, the president of the Oxford Union was arrested for the rape of 2 young women. He's out on bail. His name is Ben Sullivan, name and shame, Ben Sullivan, hear it again, Ben Sullivan. And he is out on bail, And he has had the audacity not to step back during this process, but to continue to actually be the head of the Oxford Debating Society, and to actually oversee a kind of coordinated effort by the elite to simply suppress, to cover up, and in various ways disparage the voices of the young women. Yeah, I'll just come to the end. Okay, 3 nights ago in Oxford, for the first time I think in this country, there was a vigil of about 200 people. They broke the law, they did what was illegal, they had the courage to assemble, to block a street, and they did other new things. They had the idea of wearing white ribbons. They had the idea of sitting down. They had the idea of quietly speaking about survivors. It was an extremely powerful meeting. And what's interesting is that people are already taking this to other college campuses around the UK, and they're already beginning to think what the hell they do in the autumn, which is to actually, for instance, leaflet with parent visiting days and precious parents say, don't come to this university, people rape people here and get away with it. So it becomes an unexpected way of going forward. And what I want to say is, I want my grandchildren to live in a world where of course there isn't that sexism, of course there isn't that arrogance on the part of the elite, but maybe this is an unexpected way to go to it. Because if we can stand with people who are fighting that, they can stand with us, and we become a different sort of person in this process. So look out for what's out there, join in, and let's hope to God we can actually move from the bottom up.
Okay, we have about 50 minutes. There are over 40 people in the room. So that limits us to around a dozen to 15 people. Is this, you indicate, I'm about to say, who would like to speak? Andrew? No. If I can take people in threes, that'd be helpful, I think. Gives you some warning. Gentlemen here in black t-shirts. Anyone else who would like to speak initially? Okay, we'll take Andrew.
Andrew Kennedy, SOAS UCU. So I was thinking about your points about the lack of efficacy the last few decades and how we combat despair. And I was trying to link it to the French situation, which I've been following quite closely. And I wanted to ask how the Front de Gauche and the Left Party think they're going to combat the despair, which is clearly affecting wide sections of French society. The huge focus of the National Front, highest among workers and among youth. The moment of the Anti-Capitalist Party of 2009, well, that moment's over. The moment of the Front de Gauche of 2012 and the Place au Peuple of the People's Assembly, well, that moment will have to be recuperated, I suppose. But and I was wondering how effectively you think ecological politics came across from the Front de Gauche in the campaign, because of course part of the Front de Gauche includes the Communist Party, which has not been that brilliant on ecological matters. I know that there's big fractures because of austerity in the French Greens and the French Socialists, and that Ensemble, the anti-capitalist organisations, and also the Parti Gauche have made alliances with the left Greens at municipal level, which I think is really important. But it's how to integrate a kind of climate perspective into fighting fascism, and how climate jobs plays a part in that, how the fight against racism can be linked to an ecological perspective. I don't want to go on too long, but I was just thinking that the two big advances for the left in Europe, the European elections, Syriza and, of course, Podemos and Izquierda Unida in Spain. Podemos and Syriza came out of they harnessed their organisations to social movements. So is it time for the Front de Gauche to get back to that spirit of 2012, to social assemblies, which could be anti-fascist and ecologist? Then the third question really is how we can work together on a European level to put demands on the European Union to work to organise European campaigns, which is of course why you're having this conference in London. So what can we do to help with that dynamic? And I suppose it's all about getting, as you said, from A to B.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. That's a question for Sylvain. I'm going to bring Sylvain back in to try and answer questions. Can I first of all see if there's other people who want to contribute and maybe ask questions in the process? So, so I'll take in threes. So, gentleman in the
Yes, I'm David
blue
Thomas.
shirt, and then person behind, and then that person there.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, Nancy suggesting we let the speakers come back and let's have some audience participation,
Not
not just
a-
questions. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll try and follow that. We'll see how happy we want to come in. Sorry, David.
No, it's following on from that question. Yeah. So I'm David Thomas, I'm a Green Party councillor in Oxford. And I was very struck, Nancy, by your, part of your talk there, where you're picking up on fear. And I sort of, as a Greens, we campaign hope, not hate. It's one of the things we push. I'm fearful that fear is out of control and has become a very powerful, effective political tool. We saw it over the last few weeks. And I would welcome comments or suggestions on ways to practically tackle it. Because I can see, we've got 11 months to the general election. It's going to be used. The UKIP, they've got a sniff of blood. They're seeing what they can get. They have £1.5 million running a hate campaign. They're going to get £10 million to run a hate campaign. So we've just got to. I think it's a really important point to raise.
Okay, thank you, David. Person behind.
We have had, going on about change doesn't come very quickly. We were talking in the first open sort of plenary session about punctuated equilibrium, and things can change very quickly. If you look at the first human revolution, when we actually became human, it was sort of female-dominated coalition of overtook alpha-dominated sort of male societies. And we had the counter-revolution, the Neolithic revolution, where it was sort of males, where we had private property and we had all the shit that comes after it, and now we've got capitalism. But, being an anthropologist yourself, and to understand it, you must be aware that extant hunter-gatherer societies, there is gender equality, there's no hierarchies, there's no power, they've got a sense of the world of plenty, whereas we in this society, sort of in capitalist ideological society, it's a world of scarcity. We're all trying to earn just to buy stuff. All food has just been chucked out in the supermarket, all those sorts of stories. So, I was just interested about what you're saying about the trigger